My name is Charles Martin Wender. Everybody calls me Marty. I was born in Fort Worth, Texas in 1946. Fort Worth, went to the University of Texas at Austin, met a San Antonio girl and fell in love. And any man that says he's king of his castle will lie about other things. So I moved where her family was from, and that's where I started my career in San Antonio in 1969. I went into a family business. It was her family business. I was the third generation in that business, and it was located on the near west side. And one of the huge advantages that I had was, first, I really got to understand San Antonio. Not being just on the north side, but I got to understand the south side, the east side, the west side. Really got to understand the heart and soul of San Antonio. The second major thing that happened to me was the city councilman for the district that our family business was in was Henry Cisneros when he was the city councilman. And so I have been working with and friends with Henry Cisneros now for almost 45 years. And that has helped me a whole lot. And when Henry decided to run for mayor, I realized that the foundation of San Antonio had really been built. The hemisphere had already been, that was the year before I moved to San Antonio in 1968. The medical center had been built. UTSA had started. The Riverwalk had cleaned up the tourism industry, the military. And I realized that foundation, the business leaders before me, the Red McCombs, the Tom Frosts, the people who made a difference to change San Antonio to be what its potential was. And then I knew and saw Henry Cisneros, and I knew that he was going to be like a fighter pilot. He was just going to take off with the city. And I decided to leave the family business. I was very comfortable, but I wanted to be in the mix. I wanted to be a player. I wanted to be a business leader. And to me, it was important. I think the business leaders have a lot to do with the city. They can change a city. And I decided I didn't want to stand on the sidelines anymore. I wanted to get in the game. And I wanted to follow the leaders that came before me. And my goal was to make a mark and be an addition to the city. And that has been my goal since I moved to San Antonio in 1969. The first thing I did, the family business was a real estate business. We built homes and financed homes, but that wasn't too exciting to me. It was the same thing over and over and over again. And the first piece of property, I was looking for a challenge. And I am kind of a person who likes to take problems. I think problems are opportunities. And I found a problem piece of property outside of 1604 on I-10, right past this huge rock quarry. And most people up to then, when they drove out I-10 past 1604, all they could remember was this huge scar in the earth, and it was a rock quarry. And right beyond that was a ranch, 1,220 acres. And somebody told me they've been trying to sell it for 4 years, and no one would buy it. And all the big players in San Antonio had looked at it, turned it down. And they kept lowering the price. I decided to take a look at it, and I borrowed somebody's car, went out and drove on the property, and I couldn't see anything, so finally I decided to drive up a power line. And when I got to the top of the hill, I just said, oh my God, I can see UTSA, I can see the medical center, I can see downtown San Antonio, I can see the smokestacks on the Dealey power plant on the south side of San Antonio. Make a long story short, I put the property under contract. It took me 1 year to solve all the problems the property had. 1 year. And the key to besides the views of what is now Crown Ridge, was to build Camp Bullis Road through the property over to Babcock Road. So that really started me becoming a large-scale land developer. I didn't build lots. I didn't build buildings, but I took pieces of property that I thought had potential and put in the proper infrastructure to make it more valuable, and then sell off to other real estate developers. So I was kind of felt like I'm a master plan developer and a wholesale developer. Most of the developers in San Antonio were user developers, and they became my customers. The next project I had that was interesting was when I came to San Antonio in the medical center, Floyd Curl stopped at Wurzbach. Well, I took a look at it, and from Wurzbach to Hamilton Wolf was owned by the Medical Foundation, and I started buying up pieces of property between Hamilton Wolf and Hebner Road. And at that time, Hebner Road was a 2-lane county road. But I realized that as the medical center grew, they needed a new entrance. And everybody thought I was crazy. But to make a long story short, I came up with the idea and built and got the city to participate in building Floyd Curl from Wurzbach to Hamilton Wolf all the way to Hebner. Today, it is the new north entrance into the South Texas Medical Center. Something that the South Texas Medical Center hadn't even thought about. Matter of fact, they didn't even want it at the time. But I convinced them that the access to the medical center was crucial. Then my next project, and probably the one I'm most noted for, is I found, when I saw San Antonio and I developed out I-10, which was Crown Ridge, buying the Surftex Ranch, I realized there were, and everybody told me that San Antonio was growing north, either 281 or I-10. And that was really the competitiveness. And when I built Crown Ridge, my biggest competitor was Dan Parman, who developed Stone Oak. But I realized there were 4 problems in growing due north. Number one, you had severe topography, big hills. Well, building big buildings on big hills is a problem. Number 2, you had hard rock. That's where all the rock quarries are. So putting in sewer lines and water lines in hard rock is more expensive than dirt. Number 3, you had the recharge zone, which is the environmentally sensitive area that a lot of people in San Antonio believe you shouldn't be building over. And whether you should or shouldn't, I knew it was a problem. And then 4th, wherever there's an area that somebody does not want you to build in, they find endangered species. So we got bugs in caves, and we got birds we got to worry about. But I realized that everybody said San Antonio was growing north, but I realized there were 4 major things that were happening that were shifting it to the west. Number 1, the placement of the medical center, which is west of I-10 on Wurzbach. Number 2, USAA moved from its headquarters on Broadway in Hildebrand to its campus on I-10. Then UTSA built at 1604 and I-10. Then later on, Valero built their headquarters there. So I realized there was a shift. So what most people didn't realize, what was on the west side of I-10, not the east side. But once you go west, what happens? You get off of the hard rock, you get off severe topography, you get off of the recharge zones, and you get away from the endangered species. There were 2 major problems I knew I had to overcome. And as I told you before, I believe that problems are opportunities. Okay? So not that I go look for problems, I just happen to find them. But I am a contrarian. I want to solve the problems. And so I made the decision that the future was to the west. And development had gone because of, I believe that development radiates out from economic generators. The medical center is an economic generator. USAA is an economic generator. UTSA is an economic generator. And so is Valero. So it radiates out like a drop in a bucket of water. Well, I looked to the west, and then there was a big tract of land available. You had Bandera and then Culebra, and then the next big road was Highway 90. But I realized there was a big tract of land that was vacant to the west of Culebra, the southwest. So in 1983, I put together 5 ranches, 3,500 acres that 2 people lived on that was not in the city. There were 2 major problems. Problem number 1, it was west. And people didn't use the word west. I mean, west was not the place to be in San Antonio. North was the place. No one would ever say west. And second of all, the problem property had an access problem. I knew it was going to be the fastest growing area of town residentially, but with the great freeway system we had, the biggest gap was between Interstate 10 and Highway 90. So we came up with an idea of building a freeway. And the freeway, they tried to build a Bandera freeway and a Calabria freeway, and they all were shelled because you couldn't go cut through the inner city. But we came up with a path for a freeway that went from 1604 through my 3,500 acres, past 410, going through Southwest Research and Southwest Foundation, going through the Vanderwally fields that were under the Kelly Air Force Base runways, and leaked downtown. From the day that I walked in to the highway department, ironically, the man's name was Raymond Stotzer, who was the district highway engineer, and showed him with a grease pencil on an aerial photo the path for the freeway. From the day that we went to his office, 90 days later, we went to the state highway department, which okayed the plan, and a year and a half later, we had the ribbon cutting for the access roads of what is now State Highway 151, which we named after Raymond Stotzer. Normally, the highway department buys right-of-way. Our idea was that we would give the right-of-way. So I would give my portion, which was 40% of the freeway, but I went to the other landowners. I said, look, you want a freeway? Let's donate the land. Don't worry about them, buying the land and going through condemnation. Let's just give it to them. Then there was a gap of $3 million. And I'll never forget this as long as I lived. And again, as I told you, one of my biggest assets in San Antonio has been my relationship with Henry Cisneros. And he was mayor at the time. And so, he called a meeting on a Saturday and brought us all in. And I said, I'll give my right of way and I'll give the money to pay for half the cost of the access roads, because I had a budget for my major boulevard. So I said, I'll just give it to the state. So instead of having a 110-foot boulevard running through Westover Hills, 2 lanes each direction and a 36-foot center median, we would have 2 lanes running each direction and a 400-foot center median that one day would be a freeway. And so we're sitting in the meeting, and then the land on the inside, and I just was kind of sitting still. And Henry said, Marty, we're $3 million short. I'll split it with you. You give $1.5 million, and we'll match it. And I said, but Henry, I'm not the only landowner outside of 410. He said, Marty, you want this deal? And I said, yes. I want you to commit right now. I want you to commit right now for $1.5 million. And I said, okay. And because of that freeway through this fast growing area residential that most people didn't realize, we made it the 3rd largest development center, employment center of San Antonio, 3rd behind downtown and the USAA Medical Center area. Because we had the infrastructure. Then SeaWorld comes to town, and because we had the infrastructure, they chose that as a site for SeaWorld of Texas. Then the man that came to build SeaWorld of Texas, who moved from Florida, from SeaWorld, and had been in San Diego, he takes me to lunch one day and says, Marty, you ought to build a destination resort hotel across from SeaWorld. And I said, that's great. What is one? And I never had been to a resort hotel. He said, you need to go study it. So I went and studied it. I went to California, I went to Florida, went to Hawaii, went to Arizona, Scottsdale, and really realized what it was. And I realized that was an industry that we didn't have. San Antonio at that time was the #1 tourist destination in Texas, but Texas didn't have destination resort hotels. And so, make a long story short, I convinced Hyatt, worked with Hyatt, and we built the Hyatt Hill Country Resort. People said, one, I'd never get it open because it was right at the downturn of the Texas economy, and everybody was going broke. And said if I did get open, it would never be successful. From the day the Hyatt Hill Country Resort opened, it was the most financially successful Hyatt resort ever opened in the country. Then I worked with the people at USA to help them with the Cantera Resort, worked with the JW Marriott people for their resort, and people would ask me, said, why are you helping your competitors? And I said, because when we did our feasibility report for the Hyatt Hill Country Resort, we were told the Hyatt Hill Country Resort would not meet its full potential until there were 5 destination resort hotels in San Antonio. And I made a living on San Antonio growing. And then we built this area in Westover Hills, and the funny part about why it's called Westover Hills, when I developed Crown Ridge out of I-10, I hired an ad agency. We went through all these names, what to call it, and we came up with Crown Ridge. So when it came time to develop, the 5 ranches to the west of San Antonio, well, no one used the word west. Well, I'm from Fort Worth. The Alamo Heights Terrell Hills of Fort Worth is Westover Hills. It took me 2 seconds to steal the name from Fort Worth, and we call it Westover Hills. Never thinking that it would probably become more famous than the Westover Hills in Fort Worth. But then we started attracting major companies because we were in a place where the land was flatter, but it still had hill country feel. It had oak trees and rolling hills, but not severe. And so we started attracting financial service centers. We attracted the Capital Group. We attracted Chase Credit Card Center. At first we attracted World Savings, which became Wachovia, that's now Wells Fargo. Hartford Insurance, Nationwide Insurance, Frost Bank has a major financial. And then because of our location in the CPS grid of San Antonio, we started attracting data centers. Microsoft today has 3 data centers, huge. The first one was a $1 billion data center. They have 2 more in Westover Hills. Cyrus One has 4 data centers. Valero has a data center. Frost Bank has a data center. And so we built the commercial part, and now we're finishing it off building the service into the restaurants and the service industry to service this area of Westover Hills. But to be a large-scale land developer, which I became, you rely on the growth of the city. So I have always been committed to the economic growth of San Antonio, attracting companies. In 1985, I was appointed by Governor Mark White to the Texas Economic Development Commission. So what I do is I work to bring companies from other places and have them grow jobs in San Antonio. Then I've been involved very much with education because we have to have the educated workforce for the jobs. And in 2002, I was the chairman of the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce. And that was a major milestone in my life. But most importantly, my goal in my life, one was to be flexible, which I've always stayed. I like waking up every day and not knowing, what's in store for me. And number 2 is I wanted to be a business leader, somebody who built the city to help add to the city, to make it a better place. And one of the things that I was involved in that was very important in my life, in 1983, the Pope sends out an announcement he's coming to the United States for 10 days, 1 Sunday, 1 outdoor Sunday Mass, and they chose San Antonio. So the Archdiocese sets out, says anybody who wants to donate 40 acres for this papal Mass, that could be 500,000 people, please contact the Archdiocese. Well, I'm not Catholic. I decided this could mean a whole lot to somebody, so I decided not to get involved, which is normally not my way of doing things. But I said, I'll let somebody else have that. Time goes by and time goes by. A lot of rumors, no announcement, but it wasn't my deal. So I just stayed out of it. One day I walk in my office and my receptionist says, Marty, there are 2 priests and a nun that want to talk to you. and it was Father David Garcia, Father Steuben, and Sister Charlene. And I said, put them in my conference room, I'll be right there. And I walk in, I said, what's the problem? He said, the Archbishop just called us in his office. If we don't find a place for the papal mass, they're going to move it to Houston. I said, you can't do that. The people of San Antonio have been expecting this. This is huge for San Antonio. And he said, whatever you do, stop dealing with those damn developers. And so they looked at each other, walked out of the room and says, we got to call Marty. And that's right after I had sold the land to SeaWorld, right after I'd done the freeway through Westover Hills. And I said, okay. I said, and he said, we have a week to do it. I said, not a problem. I said, get in my Jeep, drove around Westover Hills, showed them 5 spots, and they said, well, the Secret Service, because the Pope is a head of state, protection by the Secret Service, and they have to okay it. So next day they came back and says, Secret Service picked this location. I said, fine. And he said, now this is Sister Charlene and Father Steuben and Father David Garcia said, here's where we get in trouble, lawyers. And I said, fine, you have the lawyers in my office in 1 hour. I'll have my lawyer, you have your lawyer, and let me do the talking. I said, guys, an hour later, 2 lawyers across the table from each other. I said, I'm leasing 40 acres to the Archdiocese for $10. And I said, understand that after 1 million people or 500,000 people on the property, it won't be the same. But I said, I want to lease in 24 hours. Otherwise, I'm firing you. They're going to fire you. And we're going to have 2 more sets of lawyers. And I said, I don't want any phone calls. It's not the first time the Pope's ever gone anywhere. So we got a lease in 24 hours. We signed the lease at the Archdiocese. And the picture of us looked like the Last Supper. It has me and the Archbishop and the nuns, priests around the table. We're signing leases. And they're having airplanes flying over and maps showing where it was going to be. So one of the TV stations says, Marty, can we do a live eye with you at the spot for the 6 o'clock news? I said, fine. So I'm standing out there and they have the TV and they're showing all the signing of the lease and flying over the aerial and all of that. So the lady doing the interview says, Mr. Wender, why'd you donate the land for the papal mass? And I said, well, Pope's come to the United States for 10 days, 1 Sunday, 1 outdoor Sunday mass, and San Antonio was chosen. And I said, I'm just giving the land to the people of San Antonio. This is their mass, and the small part I'm playing is just something simple, but I'm just glad I was able to help and make it for San Antonio. I said, well, thank you very much. Cut away, and she says, we're going to do an advertisement, but they're going to come straight back to me. I'm going to do this by myself. I said, fine. I got out of the way, came back on, the lady sat there and said, and land developer Charles Martin expects no papal favors for his land donation because he's Jewish. And that became the theme of the thing, that it was ecumenical. And that's one of the things I love about San Antonio. It's a very ecumenical city. All the religions, all the cultures are all mixed together, whether it's the cowboy culture, the Hispanic culture, the Western culture, whether you're Catholic, Jewish, Protestant, it doesn't make any difference. We all get along. And that's what I love about San Antonio, and that's what I do every day, is because I love the people of San Antonio. I love the Alamo. I love the Riverwalk. I love everything about San Antonio, but most importantly, I love the people of San Antonio. They're the ones that make the difference. They're the ones that we do the things for. And I love being a Texan, and I love being a San Antonian. I have mentors. And when I came to San Antonio, certain people believed in me. People like Red McCombs. He took me under his wing. And I would listen to his stories about what he did to bring the Spurs to San Antonio, what he did to bring Hemisphere to San Antonio. I listened to Tom Frost. You know, I listened to business leaders and people that have been mentors to me. And I always tell people I graduated from the McCombs School of Business with the Business Honors Program, but I got my PhD from Red McCombs himself, listening to his stories. And he's always been there for me. He was there when I needed him for SeaWorld. He was there when I needed him for building Floyd Curl through the medical center. He's a person I could talk to. it's the people. I always dealt with people that were older than me because they had the experience. And as I grew in my experience myself, I've taken younger people that I have started mentoring. And I think it's my responsibility as the people who did for me, the people that I could depend on, the people who were older. It's the people who I depended on, who showed me different things. You know, Edith McAllister, Lowry Mays, Red McCombs has played a major part in my life. General McDermott, people who built the foundation. I could have never done what I've done if they hadn't built the foundation. Then running alongside of Henry Cisneros, who worked with me, you know, side by side. You know, we're the same age, and grew up not with the same backgrounds. We grew up with the same desire to build a better city. And now I think the legacy that I could leave is to implant that same for the people who want it. I know there are people out there, younger people, and we've identified them. You know, where Henry has taken like a Julian Castro under his wing, and there are certain people that I've taken under my wing that I've worked with. And then the legacy that we need to leave, if you're a business leader, and that has been my desire ever since I graduated college, was to be a business leader and leave a legacy. You know, they don't put luggage racks on top of hearse. You know, my goal is to make a difference. And I've seen the difference the people before me have made that allowed me to make the difference that I've made. And now I need to mentor the people that follow me to have the desire to take San Antonio even further. And I would not want to live in any other place. So I've had people from up north ask me, well, where are you going to retire to? And I laughed and I said, why would I go anywhere? And why would I retire? I love what I do every day, and I'm going to do it till the day Port of Loring comes and picks me up.